was a lonely road, a vision only I could see, but that singularity is what greatness demands. Xavier's voice, amplified and sanctimonious, echoed through the grand ballroom of the Hilton. On the massive screen behind him, My Designs Are Designs cycled in a glossy tribute. He bathed in the blinding white of the stage lights, a shimmering silhouette of stolen genius. 1,000 people were applauding. I remained perfectly still at my table in the back, the crisp linen cold beneath my fingertips. My lawyer Wallace leaned in slightly. I just need to get through the next 2 minutes, I murmured. We met 10 years ago in a shared, dusty workspace in Greenpoint, a place buzzing with the sound of 3D printers and the smell of burnt coffee. I was the quiet one, the creator, lost for hours refining the curve of a chair leg on a Wacom tablet. Xavier was the supernova. He had the handshake, the perfect teeth, and the uncanny ability to make you feel like his vision was the only one that mattered. He called our design Studio Ven, the intersection of my art and his ambition. Our first big win, a contract for the lobby furniture of the Kinsey Hotel, ended with us drinking $300 champagne out of mismatched coffee mugs on the floor of our tiny office. That night, he threw his arm around me and said, "We're gonna own this city, you and me." That was the memory I held onto. The first red flag was subtler. During a crucial investor pitch, he walked them through my entire portfolio, my sketches, my renders. He never said my name once. When I brought it up later, he just laughed, a bright, dismissive sound. Man, I was just so in the zone, you know how it is. It's for the team. The next few years were a golden haze. We landed the Solstice audio account, designing their iconic minimalist speakers. We were featured in Architectural Digest. Lives were a blur of late nights fueled by takeout from Mama Quan's, blueprints spread across the floor, and the low hum of rendering farms. But a subtle imbalance began to grow. I was the one pulling 70-hour weeks, chasing the perfection of a line or a texture. He was the one taking clients to $1,000 dinners at Per Se, building the brand. My name, once an equal partner on our pitch decks, began to shrink, relegated to a small credit line on the final page. I was the face. I was the engine he kept hidden in the basement. He was exploiting my quiet nature, framing my dedication as a lack of interest in the business side. I rationalized it. He was better at that stuff, I told myself. I just wanted to do the work. The shift began with a misplaced file. I was searching our shared server for a 2019 tax document when my search query pulled up a folder I'd never seen before, buried deep in his private directory, X Ventures Legacy. My curiosity was a cold spike. Inside, I found a complete business plan for a new company, Xavier Sterling Designs. It was all there, our entire 5-year strategy, our client list, even projections based on projects I was currently developing. The intellectual property had been laundered, scrubbed clean of my name. Attached was a retainer agreement with a new law firm, dated 6 months prior. He hadn't just stolen my work, he had methodically erased me from my own life. At night, I didn't sleep. I downloaded a file recovery program and spent the next 3 weeks in a quiet parallel existence. By day, I was his partner. By night, I was an archaeologist, digging through the digital ruins of our partnership. I found the deleted drafts, the early emails. The scale of the betrayal widened with every recovered file. It wasn't just my work he was taking. He was systematically siphoning funds from Ven to finance his new solo venture. He was using our money to pay the lawyers who were helping him steal from me. Breaking point came on a Tuesday, in the sterile, glass-walled conference room of our biggest investor, Prescott Capital. All 4 of them were there. Xavier, looking impeccable in a tailored navy suit, stood before a slick presentation. He announced he was dissolving Ven to launch his new, more agile firm. He clicked to a slide titled The Visionary, and a photo of his face filled the screen. Some people are visionaries, he said, his eyes sweeping over me with a look of detached pity, and some are just technicians. Ven was a great start, but to reach the next level, I need to shed the dead weight. It's not personal, it's just the cost of ambition. The investors, captivated, nodded along. The air in the room grew thin, the city noise outside the window fading to a low hum. In that moment of profound humiliation, my plan, which had been a formless collection of data and anger, crystallized. It now had a deadline and a target. As he continued his triumphant monologue, my eyes fixed on a tiny detail projected on the screen, a render of the Sterling chair, his flagship product. On the back leg, there was a tiny, almost invisible rendering artifact, a pixelated shimmer I hadn't bothered to fix in the draft file. He was so arrogant, so lazy, he hadn't even stolen the finished product. He just ripped the raw data straight from my work-in-progress folder. My first call was to Mr. Wallace, a veteran IP attorney with a reputation for quiet, brutal efficiency. My second was to a forensic accountant, a woman named Ms. Zielinski, who found joy in untangling knotted financial threads. The initial retainer cost me $45,000, nearly all of my personal savings. For 2 months, my life was a meticulous campaign. I spent nights collating evidence, cross-referencing server logs with bank statements. Wallace and I met in nondescript coffee shops miles from my usual neighborhood. Once, Xavier's new assistant walked in, and I had to feign a loud, cheerful reunion with Wallace, pretending he was an old college friend. My heart pounded for an hour afterward. The evidence we compiled was irrefutable. We had 1,400 pages of it. There were the timestamped server logs showing my creation of every single design file. The recovered emails between Xavier and his lawyers discussing the asset migration from Venn. Transaction records from Zelinsky. A clean line showing $128,400 flowing from Venn's operating account to the shell corporation that funded his new firm. The text messages from a year ago, where he'd called me the design soul of the company. We even had a sworn affidavit from a junior designer he'd fired who saw him download my entire creative archive to an external hard drive one Friday night. The most damning piece of irony. Bought the domain name for Xavier Sterling Designs using the Venn Company credit card. As a decoy, Wallace sent him a standard, deliberately weak cease and desist, focusing only on a minor breach of our partnership agreement. Xavier's lawyer replied with a dismissive, 2-sentence email. He was walking into the trap without a second thought. The trap was the Global Design Innovator Awards. Xavier, nominated for Designer of the Year, was the evening's golden boy. After a fawning introduction, the host invited a respected industry journalist, a woman I'd briefed extensively, to the stage to say a few words before the announcement. Xavier stood there, beaming. The journalist approached the podium and adjusted the microphone. I have a statement from the true lead designer and co-founder of Venn, she began, her voice calm and clear. Xavier's smile tightened into a mask of confusion. The first wave of the reveal was financial. She detailed the shell corporation, the diverted funds, the precise dollar amounts. A nervous murmur rippled through the audience. People started looking at each other, then at a frozen Xavier. Then came the killer proof. The giant screen behind him, meant to display a career retrospective, flickered. On one side, it showed the slick marketing shot of his Sterling chair. On the other, it displayed a screenshot of my raw file from the Venn server, dated 10 months prior. A red circle highlighted the identical, unique rendering artifact on the leg of both chairs, a digital fingerprint. The journalist's voice cut through the silence. This isn't just a partnership dispute. This is a case of systematic intellectual property laundering. Xavier started stammering about a technical glitch about disgruntled employees. He looked wildly around the room, his eyes finally landing on me in the back. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I just held his gaze as Mr. Wallace stood up from his seat in the third row, a clear signal that this was no longer a PR problem. This was a legal one. The cameras, once his adoring fans, were now his executioners. Next 24 hours were a digital firestorm. The story was on every major design blog, a viral thread on Twitter detailing the evidence. The awards committee publicly rescinded his nomination before noon the next day. Prescott Capital, our primary investor, filed a lawsuit for fraud. I turned off my phone. The legal battle was short and brutal. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Xavier settled. The judgment forced the complete liquidation of Xavier Sterling Designs. He had to pay back the $128,400, cover all legal fees, and issue a public retraction published in 3 industry trades. All intellectual property was legally and irrevocably returned to me. About a year later, a friend sent me a screenshot from a Zoom webinar. It was Xavier, a guest speaker on brand resilience. He was broadcasting from a cramped, beige apartment, a sad, wilting plant visible over his shoulder. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by a frayed sweater. The supernova had collapsed into a white dwarf. Today, my new studio is a quiet, sunlit space in the Navy Yard. It's just me and 2 young, brilliant designers I'm mentoring. We have a commission for the TATE Modern on the board. The work is honest. The piece is real. Last week, a journalist from Design asked me what drives my creative process. I thought for a moment before I answered. It can be a lonely road, a vision you have to protect, but true singularity is about integrity, not ego. Greatness was never about a name. It was always about the work.